Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Welcome to another episode of Rock That Relationship. This season, we're talking all about dating. Today is a really fun topic to talk about for some of us, and for some of you, it may be, a little wandering into the fear of, or maybe having kind of questionable experiences with, but we're talking about online dating apps. Yay. You giggle, I giggle, only because I've only been on them like one set of times, right? Like one time to find, to go through like a dating process. But I know some people have been on them for years. Some people have never been on them and they're afraid. So give me your first gut reaction, Tracy, when I say online dating apps.
Well, again, vomit. But interestingly, that's actually how I met my ex-wife, who was for 8 years. And then I met another person who I did fall in love with and was with for a time. So I shouldn't really trash them because they did lead me to two people that I was with and had, meaningful relationships with. But then I guess I think it kind of really depends on your state of mind when you go into them, right? Like taking acid, which I've never done, but you're never supposed to take acid when you're in a bad mood because you'll have a terrible trip. And I feel like if you're not in the best state of mind, going onto those apps can really put you into a much worse state of mind.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's good. I actually go with the mantra of like, never do acid at all. But, I know people can make their own choices, but I hear what you're saying. It's like your mindset, right? Right. You go into the dating app thing thinking like, this is really positive. This could be an opportunity to meet great people. You might have a better experience than, oh no, this is my only option. But
if you're just still sad, right? If you're still really sad, which is what everybody pushes you to do. Oh, you're upset about the breakup? Go ahead and get on the apps. And a friend just texted me literally 1 second before we started recording. Her divorce is not even final and she's on the apps and it made her even feel worse. And I'm like, I told you that. She's like, I'm going to need you to talk some sense into me later. So that's what I'll be doing after work today.
Well, we talked about this in a previous episode where we talked about like, how do you know when you're ready? Right. So, dating apps seem like kind of low hanging fruit. Like even if you're not ready, there's no harm in putting a profile out there. And we had a really lively conversation about that, but it does help if you're in a state of mind that you're open to what could happen if you're going to put that kind of investment into a dating app. So, like you, I have known many people who have met and have thriving relationships and they met on apps. I've never dated anyone that I met on an app or been in like a relationship with anyone from an app. But then again, I had just done this, been on the apps in the last, a couple of years. So it's like pretty new for me, but I will tell you, some of the things that, kind of stood out to me. And I know you've been on the apps. Let's talk about our own experiences with what we look for, when we're on the apps, what kind of stuck out as like, yes, that's a success, and other things about maybe when we were posting and we were behaving on the apps, like what kinds of things we, figured out worked and didn't work. And I'm sure that our listeners have many other strategies and tips, but let's walk through a couple of the main functions of the app and the main things you do on an app. So let's talk about the profile. So how did you go about creating your profile that went on your dating app?
Well, okay, so I've been on 3 apps. I was on OkCupid, then Zoosk, and then Her. So at 2 different times in my life. Prior to my marriage, I got on OkCupid. I met my wife probably day 2 of the apps. I never fill out anything. I don't fill anything out.
You don't even have a description, like a paragraph or anything about who you are?
No. I'll just maybe fill out like that I don't smoke, that I really don't drink, or I just drink socially. I'll only fill out the bare minimum that they require, and that would give somebody like, maybe some information about me. I'm not a smoker. I lean towards a Buddhist. I'm trying to think. I probably put my education level on there. And then I put a picture usually of me with my dogs, like walking outside. And that's all I've actually, now that I think of, for all 3, that's all I've ever done. Oh, and I did
Oh,
do Facebook dating recently, and I did the same thing. I only fill out the memo. I don't say a word about myself, nothing.
interesting. Maybe that was my problem. I mean,
Oh,
I sat up and like wrote this, you know, again, I'm a writer. So like, I was like, oh, I'm going to write this like witty and interesting kind of synopsis of who I am. And, you know, kind of like almost like a flirtatious little take on the things that are important to me. And I did, I wrote this, I sent it out to people. I got feedback and, you know, I thought it was really interesting, but it didn't seem to make a difference because people obviously didn't read it because most of the messages that I got from people were like, oh, what do you like to do for fun? And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you not read? Because I wrote a whole paragraph of the things I like to do for fun. And I thought, well, you're not even looking at this, but
isn't that helpful? That's helpful, right? If you put
it
it on
is.
there, then you see the people who are not even paying attention, and they're kind of, I feel like it's not that the apps are full of desperate people, but it does actually, I don't want to be on them again. I'm not saying that I won't, but it does show you, are these people paying attention? Are they observant? You know, if they
Right.
are asking you questions that you put right on there. And that's kind of one of the reasons, A, I don't like to write about myself. And B, I want to see if I guess because maybe each time I've gone on, it's not so much to meet people, but kind of just to be there. I don't know. I did meet several friends who are your friends now too on the Her app, but I kind of just exist there as it's clear that I'm a real person, but I don't say much about myself.
Yeah. I find that so interesting.
And yet I've had two serious relationships out
Right.
of them and friends and, several friends.
And I've had none, no relationships. Although I will tell you that there was one person who wrote me a really sweet message, at one point and said something about, oh, I really like this about your profile, and said something that was, pretty obscure that was in there. And we ended
Mm-hmm.
up connecting about it, and we've since become friends. I'm actually going to dinner with her
Mm-hmm.
tonight. So I like that because it was like a
Mm-hmm.
attention to detail, finding a commonality. Like, I know you mentioned this in your profile. I ... can relate to that in this way or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I like that, because I look for a partner that pays attention to the details and that
Right.
finds points of connection. I don't want to just be some kind of billboard and someone skims
Mm-hmm.
by and is like, oh yeah, cool. All right. Click smile,
Right.
and that's what I wanted. So I guess you're right. By putting up a descriptive profile and then having people basically ignore it, was kind of, a telling sign.
Yeah, it's good because then you can screen them out right away because they're not observant or paying attention or not what you want. You want someone who's like, engaging and communicative and is going to engage with the material versus just like, oh, skim it or see it, ask their own question. Because that's kind of a indicator also that they're really not, are they going to really engage with you? If they're not even going to engage with your profile, how
Right.
meaningful can the engagement with you in person be,
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, and I know you do more just fill out the fields that are asked of you. And I do this more like long paragraph thing, but that also is part and parcel to kind of who we are and how we show up also. And I think it's, in your case, when you're talking about filling out those minimums, you're getting people to then maybe ask you questions, which I know you like too. So that could be really
Well, no
beneficial.
one has really ever. Oh, so I met my wife very quickly, and then I met the girlfriend very quickly. And I do have multiple friends now in Seattle because I don't know if I had to like select the cities or I maybe did because I used to live in Seattle and always I'm thinking about moving back. But um, I'm trying to think if I if people really engaged. I guess they must have, which is how we became friends. So, but I noticed recently on that Facebook dating, the people were just so short and kind of not rude, but it's like, gosh, why don't you just, I would like write, if they asked me a question, I'd write back like a nice sentence, a couple sentences.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that one was like, I don't know what she said. How long have you been single? That was it. Like
Right.
no grammar, no nothing. Just like,
Well, not
oh
even
my
like a
God.
hello. I remember that
I
was like
know.
it was just like an interrogation. I
I
mean,
know.
yeah.
What? But that's good to know because I don't want to talk to that person again. Like if you can't even
Yep.
form a couple sentences to ask me something and that's clearly your main fixation, okay, bye. You
Right.
know?
Well, that leads me to this other idea about, what we put on our profiles, but what about what we're looking for on other people's? And I'll tell you my biggest red flag is when you have that, either it's an open paragraph where people can fill out a profile, or they're answering the question, what are you not looking for in a relationship? And then they go on and on and on about things that were clearly things that their ex did, right? Like, I don't want cheaters and liars and scammers. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm a cheater and liar and scammer. I better not reply back to this person. If you can tell that they're super angry about like an ex.
Right.
And so, I put, what is it? There was a question in one of the profile, one of the sites I did. It said, what do you not like? And I think it was supposed to be in the context of like, what do you not like in relationships? Right. And I didn't answer it that way. I actually just wrote that I didn't like olives. And, I'm like, but I don't like olives. Like, that's important if you're going to get like a pizza with me. But that was like where I went. And then, in my first place I went, and then I added a few other things that were clearly more relationship oriented. But, I think I'm like, when I see this where people just kind of rant about like, all these things that clearly their ex was, it's like, ooh.
But again, that's really good to see. Like I've had thoughts before that there should be somebody who goes through and helps all of these people, make their profile better. But actually, now that we're talking about it, I don't think that would be a good idea, because you want to see those things up front, because that will save you a lot of time and energy and waste. It's true. If someone's spewing out that kind of stuff, like, really, A, they're not ready to be in a new relationship, and B, do you really want that negativity? I don't.
No, I don't.
So I'm glad. I'd rather see it up front.
No, I mean, you make a good point, because I think about it. I'm like, we should look at, see if people are like, social or, online dating app profile coaches. But you're right. I mean, it's at some point you get the raw self. Like you and I have talked about this, and, I'm, as a writer, I'm like super into grammar and spelling. And when I read some of these profiles, and they're just full of like blatant spelling errors and even typos, things that like even the person who has the worst spelling would obviously have caught if they read it before they clicked post. It just gives me, again, an indication that there's not an attention to detail. And that's important to me in a relationship. It may not be important to other people. People may not care. As a writer, I want to be with someone who can communicate well and can, have good grammar and good writing skills. So that's important too.
So the apps are helping you right away to like screen that out, just by the nature of how these people are filling stuff out. So now I'm going to go on record saying I don't think there should be online dating coaches, because it could cover up some stuff that shouldn't be covered up.
Very important, right? Yeah. And if you yourself were like, oh, I'm going to, proof my profile and all that stuff. And, that's great if you're conscientious about it. But yeah, if you're covering stuff up, like you want to write, I don't want cheaters and liars and scammers. And then you're like, okay, well, I should probably delete that. You might want to sit with yourself for a second and be like, where did that come from? The cheaters, liars, and scammers. Am I ready to actually be out there?
But I think if you're writing that online, I mean, let's be real. If you're going to put that out, you're already typing it up. And I think a lot of people get on the apps when they're in distress. They're either home alone and like, oh my God, I'm never going to be with someone. Blah, blah, blah. Let me put it out online.
Right. Just see what's out there. I'm just going to throw something up real quick. Right.
Or
versus
they're just like, they're doing it to retaliate against their ex or something like that, Yeah. There's reasons for that. I had something else to say that I've forgotten, but I do think the apps are very important. I don't want to trash them. I've clearly benefited from them, but I also the whole experience is full of it's fraught with just so much potential for emotional trauma.
Right. Well, let's transition to the next thing that we put on our dating apps that could be very much what you're talking about, fraught with all sorts of things. Photos, right? Photos. Okay. I'm going to tell you the photo that I just literally cannot deal with. But let me tell you one that I saw. And while I can't deal with it, it is my second one I can't deal with, which somebody literally put up something that looked like a senior photo from the 80s. And it had like those like superimposed twinkle light stars around them, like you get at like a photo studio that were, it was like a really bad Instagram filter. And I'm like, it looked like a celebrity shot. I was like, oh no. But the worst, I will tell you the worst. What is up with bathroom mirror selfies? Like if you want to take a picture of your full self, do you not know how to take your phone and like sit it down, put the timer on and stand in a nice place, like maybe in front of a tree and get a full length picture of yourself? Or maybe ask a friend to take one. Do you have to be in your disgusting bathroom to take this picture?
What if their bathroom's not disgusting and it's clean? It's still like, why are you in the bathroom? There's so many places to take a photo. But see, that's why like all the photos I've ever put on were with my dogs outside, because that's predominantly, well, okay, I have a lot of other activities I do, but that's something that's really about me. And I feel like that's saying, look, here's a person who has dogs, who walks her dogs, who's outside. And it's like, she likes to be out in the outdoors. So I feel like that photo is saying a lot. And if you post something in your bathroom, I'm fixated on, is the bathroom clean? What is your toilet like? Why are you in the bathroom? Is there no other place in your home that you could take the photo? And see, that's really important. That's important. Again,
I guess, again, that's a filter, right? Like,
exactly.
Like, do you not know how to set a timer on a phone or, something? I mean, one of the things that, I think about photos that were important to me was I wanted to make sure that I put up photos that were recent. I mean, nobody wants to be bait and switched, right? With the old photos. And I had pictures, some that were close up, so you could see my face, some that were like my whole body. Not that I want someone to judge that, but they could see me in different ways, right? Like it wasn't just these like zoom in kind of things. But I did the same philosophy you did, is pictures of like what I love to do. Like I have a lot of hiking pictures, walking pictures, being outside pictures. And if you've met me for like 2 seconds, you will know that is me. And that's what I love to do. And I remember I had this one woman on one of the sites. She messaged me and she goes, "Don't you have any other pictures of you than just working out?" And I was I was like, "No, I'm really like, just this unidimensional human. And all I do is stand outside all day." I don't know if she wanted like a professional headshot. It's just like, this is who I am. I'm being authentic. This is what I love to do. I want you to see me in my element. I don't have pictures of me in like some flowy dress. I don't like dresses. I don't have pictures of me, with makeup on. I don't know what you wanted.
Did you follow up with her?
I did. I wrote her back and I said, no, I don't.
Did she say anything else? Did you say like,
she unmatched with me after that, right? And it's like, okay, that's fine. But that also told me something like, this is my authentic self. And so, I mean, for me, it was a blend of, some people could argue that their authentic self stands in the bathroom and takes selfies, but I would say probably that's not your main hobby. But you like walking with your dogs and being outside. I like hiking, pictures of people, doing whatever it is that they love to do. But here's the other thing that was confusing. I don't know if this was confusing for you, is when people put pictures up that are of them with other people. And you're like, which one?
Yes, I find that confusing. Yes.
Yeah.
I find it strange and confusing. And I guess the thought is, hey, look, I'm fun. I've got friends. I assume they're not putting it up with their exes, there are other people that are in partnerships looking for a third. So that does happen. But I've noticed that before, and it's a little confusing, but, I was going to say, I've never put anything more than one picture ever. I just put the picture of me with the dog, and that's it.
Of course you do that. And I put like a whole photo album, of like,
but that's where I feel like you can, I feel like you can see, okay, like, can you tell that I'm healthy from my skin and my, like the bone structure? And like, I usually don't even have it's like maybe my chest and not my chest, that part, but just like, neck and above. Like, I have that one that's on Facebook now that's just me with the dogs. Like somebody took it from half a block away. But yeah, I never put anything that's really like you can see my whole body or anything. I just figure if I look approachable, somebody wants to approach me, great. If somebody said to me, "Don't you have other pictures?" I wouldn't even want to talk to them again, because that seems kind of already critiquing you.
Yeah.
Like already attacking you for stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I didn't like that either. And I'm like, what is my authentic self not good enough either? And
and why are you asking that person for something else? Like they clearly they put up the profile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I probably have maybe turned off some, or maybe I missed some opportunities. Although I think I've been on the apps for a total of less than a week for all of them combined, because that's how fast things happen. But I possibly people could have looked at me and been like, "Oh, she doesn't have anything to say." But I also have such a complicated backstory that it's hard to put that into words without seeming like a lunatic. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that's
Right.
every time I go for a job interview, they're like, you have a very interesting background. So it's
Yeah.
like the same, right? If I start to explain what's happened in my personal life, oh my, it would come off crazy town. So I just don't do it because I'm like, well, I either look like an approachable person who seems okay or I don't. And you know
Yep.
what? It's attracted multiple people who I've gotten relationships with, so I can't complain.
Wow. Maybe I should have tried that strategy. I was on the apps for months and months and months, and I had all sorts of questionable things happen. Check out my upcoming memoir about dating, online dating, and some of the people I met
Well,
along the way.
you
Oh,
had a lot of interesting things happen, which I urge you to continue because it was funny. It was very funny. There was a lot of things that happened that were funny, but I also felt like for you, and this is kind of your personality versus mine, is you kind of treated it like a job or like a, you know what I mean? Like a profession because you had it all. I just kind of put it on there and then like if somebody contact me, fine. Whereas you were very strategic about everything.
oh, well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I sorted through people every night, and we'll get into that about messaging, but I mean, I had spreadsheets and everything. But last thoughts on pictures, here. One other thing I would say is, I've seen people who put up like really, really horrible quality pictures, like they're blurry or they are taken from so far away you can't see anything. I've seen
I
people
just
even,
pass those by.
yeah,
Just,
or
I'm not
scenic
wasting my
pictures.
time.
Like I'm going to put
Yeah.
up a picture of
Yeah.
just my dog. I'm like, I'm not dating
Yeah.
your dog,
No,
right? Like,
exactly.
yeah, weird pictures. So, okay, well, we're on the same page with the kinds of things we pass over. So if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a blurry picture of my dog with an Instagram filter on,
Yeah.
sitting with a bunch of my friends and I'm not even in the picture, you may want to reconsider that picture.
I think one nice picture where you're doing something you like is enough. It's worked for me. I suggest it as a strategy.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. And I had
With the
multiple,
sun
but
shining,
oh
not like in
yeah.
a depressing, dark place. I
Oh
mean, we're
gosh.
sun people, so we
And
like
not,
the sun.
and not in your bathroom, not in your bathroom.
No,
There was
not in
one
the
I saw,
bathroom.
there was literally this lady was laying on what looked like a hardwood dining room table, laying sideways, and then took a picture of herself. I'm like, are you like a antique restorer? Like, did you restore this table? Like, what's the significance? Are you just so tired you can't even sit upright for the picture? It was very intriguing to me.
I think there was something else going on there
I'm sure
for
there
you.
is. I'm so vanilla. I don't even know what that could possibly mean. Okay, let's talk about messaging. Okay, so you and I have very different views on messaging, actually so much so that we had a very in-depth conversation and it ended up as a chapter in my book about kind of what I call dating rules, right? So when you would get a message from someone or when you wanted to initiate a message to someone, did you ever think strategically about when to send that?
No,
Okay.
I don't ever think strategically about anything. I just do. I just do. And I let the chips fall where they may. And that's the way I live my life. And it turns out to cause me some emotional suffering, but it also leads me to greater growth. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But no, I don't. Just whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like if I'm in the bank lot or no, what am I saying? I don't go to a bank. But like if I'm sitting at work or whatever, I mean I might just I don't know. Nope.
You just send it whenever you feel like you want to send it. Even if you're at the bank when you don't even go to the bank, you just send it.
Exactly.
You might even
just
go to the bank just to send a message. Okay.
That's that's a snowboarding term too, which I really love. Is just send it. You just send it. That means you just go. Just go. And let what's going to happen. Like you just,
that scares me. That literally scares me when you just say that out loud. Like let whatever's going to happen.
Right. I learned to snowboard with my ex who was 10 years younger than me. And, she, I think had been snowboarding for 7 years by the time we started snowboarding together. And that was my philosophy and it scared the crap out of her. And she was much more careful. She's a lot more like you. You guys are very much alike. And I'm like, just send it, just suck it, let's go. And I just go straight, just whatever's going to be there. I'm going to just deal with it when I get there. That's my life philosophy.
Well, it's gotten you this far and you're still alive and you're gainfully employed and you have a good life. So, But mine's like a total other end of the continuum, right? Like I'm very strategic about when I message people for the first time. If it's for the first time, I usually wait until the evenings because a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people have day jobs, and the evening means that maybe if I message them, that they'll reply back sooner. And then we might actually engage in like a messaging conversation back and forth because they're not like at work or in the middle of the day or the morning and they're trying to get ready for the day. So I reach out usually in the evening time, right after dinner, like probably 8 o'clock. But if I'm responding to a message, I also don't usually respond until the evening times for two reasons. One, I don't want to look too eager. Like if something came in the middle of the day. Two, I work and I don't have, sometimes I don't have the time to go back and forth in a message thread in the middle of the day. But three, I just don't, I want to be able to thoughtfully respond. So I will sometimes go back and like craft my response in a Word document,
my word.
I know. And then I'll copy and paste it. And I don't have time to do that in a bank parking lot. So,
oh my God.
I know. And
we had I think not an argument because we don't argue except for twice maybe, but like we had a discussion about this. I don't think that's healthy. Is it
healthy? But I don't know about replying like at a stoplight either, but
yeah, because who cares? Like my thought is whatever, they'll get to it when they get to it. You know what I mean? And like, if you're like having that strategicness and then that person's not a strategic person, then they're not going to respond in the way that you expect them to. I guess that's the thing, is like having no expectations. Like when I would see someone on the app that like I was interested in, the last person that I dated from the app, I just immediately that second, boom, done, send a message. Hey, I'm just on here looking to make friends who could be friends. And then, that one turned into something else, but that's how all the rest became friends. Just right as soon as I saw it, boom, hey, there.
Wow.
Because you're like waiting for that. You've got an idea. And I remember this very specific conversation. You had it down to like how many minutes, how many whatevers. And I'm like, that person is probably like, they don't even think of it that way. They might not operate that way. They might be at their grandma's bedside. Like, you don't know, right?
But like you said earlier, that could serve as a filter. Like if I write a very consciously crafted message that's witty with like a question at the end, and then they reply back 1 second later with a bunch of spelling errors in the text, it just tells me that they're a little bit more hasty, not as thoughtful. And that, that's important to me, right? Like someone who might wait a little bit and give me a more substantive response when they have time and be able to go back and forth. That tells me a lot about their personality, which probably is a lot more compatible with me than someone who's a little bit more impulsive. And
well, excuse me, I may be impulsive, but I do give substantive responses because I can do that at a stoplight or in the bank as well. Like I do give substantive, but I just never think of, oh, this time, or you know what I mean? Not that I don't obsess if somebody that I know doesn't get back to me, but I think that's the other thing, is that when you get on these apps, you just really can't be attached to the outcome because you don't know these people. You have no idea what kind of lives they're living. And if you are setting up like an outcome in your head or an attachment to how it should be, you're going to be, I think, very disappointed.
Oh, I would agree. I had this one.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I had this one situation where I was messaging back and forth one night with this woman on the app, and it was just great. We were having this amazing discussion. It was like, it had substance to it. It was really deep. It was about our perspectives of diversity, equity, inclusion in the school system. And it was really a cool conversation. And we were going back and forth, and she's like, all right, well, I'm going to head to bed. I'm getting tired, but let's talk again tomorrow night. So, oh yeah. So the next night I got on and I said, hey, how was your day? And then she never responded back to me ever again. And then
in life?
Well, let me say, when I say never again, 3 months passed and I get a message from her. Hey, how are you? And I wrote her back.
That is bizarre.
And I wrote her this whole thing, and then she never responded back. And then I really never heard from her again. And so, part of it is also like when you just send a general message, have lowering your expectations that you're going to get a response. But even on those things where people are promising you like, hey, we'll chat tomorrow or whatever, you don't know. And so that was, as much as you can have thick skin about it, it is discouraging, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh,
and also
energy
you don't know
from this.
You don't know what is going on with those people in their home, or even if they're real people. That's the thing, right? Like, I actually gave people my phone number right away because I was like, I'm not being on these apps for very long. I'm getting off. Like, here's my cell phone number if you want to communicate. And here's my Facebook profile, Facebook me. Cause I don't keep my Facebook stuff very private. And I want to see who they really are. And I feel like you could have been messaging with a lunatic. And that's the thing is like, when it's filtered through the app, you have no idea who those people are. And I literally have been on those apps, I think collectively for all 4 of them for under a week. And so if I can give them my Facebook stuff and then they can get on, I can actually see more into their life that way than through these apps, because the app, it could be a catfish, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's true. Yeah. That's the question is like, how soon do you give them your phone number? But I like the idea of going through Facebook where you can just, kind of unfriend them if it's if it doesn't work out or you don't want to talk to them anymore, as opposed to like, I wouldn't want to give them my personal cell phone number that quickly, but you're right though. You don't want to be on the apps for too long.
Yeah, because it really is, you don't know who they are. I personally, as I do love Facebook. And so I feel like you can see what they're about if they're on there. And frankly, if a person's not on Facebook, we don't have anything else to talk about. So I'm not going to date someone who's not on Facebook. That's just the fact.
We almost weren't friends because of that.
Well, even to have like a little bit of a presence there, you know what I mean? Because that's my reality, right? So for me, Facebook is a place that I keep in contact with so many people I've met around the world and the country. So it's something I need. And I feel like I want someone to at least be operating in the same world that I am. I don't want to go meet somebody on an app who's then like, well, I live in an off-grid community and I only came here once a week to the coffee shop. Like, okay, bye. Like, I'm not interested,
Right. That makes sense. Like, well, for you, it makes sense that one of your filters is, their social media presence. And for me, one of my filters is, can they spell? Right. And I guess it's just,
I like spelling too.
Yeah. Spelling is good. Spelling's important. Yeah. So, okay. So let me then ask you this. So like, if we talked about transitioning kind of off the app to text or Facebook or something, we both talk about getting off it pretty quickly. I don't want to be on there for very long, but what about meeting in person? Like if they're local, right? Like, or something that's accessible to be able to meet in person. How soon after you connect with them on the apps do you want to meet in person?
Okay. Well, you and I have 3 friends in common whose names all start with S here in town. And I met with them after the first time I messaged with them.
Really? That
yes,
quickly?
And I'll give my phone number the first time I message with someone. Because for me, a phone number is not protected information. I mean, I've had it as a lawyer. I've had it out there before. And as you know, I have a police background. I have a self-defense background. I'm always armed. So for me, giving my personal information, my address, I wouldn't give my address to someone, but my phone number, it's not like in the old days when your landline was tied to your address. So I feel like a cell phone is you can block somebody. It's not tied to your address. I don't feel that that's private information in the way that other people do. So I'll do it day one and I'll meet people day one. I could meet them that day.
Wow. Okay.
But again, we're talking, you and I are only meeting women, and women are not lethal to other women in the way that men are lethal to women, that are deadly. So it's not that we don't have the same risk as a straight woman does,
Well, yeah, in theory, yes. Statistically, yes.
In theory, like statistically, 99.9% of the time, we're not going to be raped or murdered by a woman that we might meet,
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So this idea of meeting in person, I think of, at first before I started online dating, I was in this like little meetup group. We were online and people were giving dating advice to each other. And it wasn't like a dating site or anything, but someone said, meet people as soon as you can. Do not waste your time or their time. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever. But then I would get on the apps and I would start to get kind of roped in to these conversations back and forth. And I remember I got into one where I connected with someone all the way across the country and it wasn't feasible for us to meet. So we were on the phone and we were on the apps and then we switched to text and we were doing this for 6 weeks. And then finally, we were able to make it happen to meet up with each other, which involved, planes and days of visits and all sorts of stuff. And there was zero chemistry on my end. And I was like completely freaked out because I had actually gone down a rabbit hole of creating a connection with this person, because we had stayed on the texting, we had been on the phone, but we hadn't met yet. So I had this kind of emotional connection and no physical connection when we met. And I was in a real pickle. You remember this. It was a very big pickle. And so even with someone like communicating from afar, if I were to do it all over again, I would say we need to either get on a plane within the first week or we need to stop communicating, and we got to make it happen, because I cannot develop an emotional relationship with someone and then only to turn around and meet them and have zero chemistry and then be stuck.
See, that's so interesting, because I would then take not necessarily the opposite tack, but so when I met my now ex-wife, she was in North Carolina and I was in Wyoming, and it was a weird fluke that I ended up in her quiver, as they called it, on OkCupid. And we messaged and then talked on the phone and all that for a while. And then she decided to come to Wyoming in the winter, which presented a lot of challenges. And she did come there and we had a great weekend. And then I ended up going to see her in North Carolina, and then she came back with me with the kids to Wyoming. Then I went back to North Carolina. So if I hadn't, we had already established a lot via phone, and the same with the person that then I met in Phoenix, which is about an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours from Tucson. We messaged a lot because I wouldn't want to waste my time going to see that person if I didn't have the emotional connection. So I have the opposite. Like, the emotional connection for me is way more important than the other, even though when I go out now, let's say I was going out now to look for somebody, the physical would be the most important. But when I've met them online, it's the emotional that's most important. And I wouldn't want to waste my time going to meet somebody if I didn't have a real emotional connection to them. I don't know what happened with you and that person. I still haven't decided fully what the issue was, but
but then let me ask you this. So you say you've met people on these apps, and then you've met up with them like literally later that day. So you clearly don't have an emotional connection. Is there just less investment because they're local? Are you talking about?
No, those were only friends.
Only friends.
I didn't want to date them. I already knew that immediately.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, but for dating, you want to have that emotional connection before you meet.
Not if they're local. But I guess you were talking about farther away.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's okay.
You said get on a plane within a week. I wouldn't waste my money. If I didn't have I would want to establish a couple of weeks of an emotional connection first. But if they're local and they're like, if they were desperate, like, let's meet this afternoon, like that one crazy person who I thought we were just meeting as friends, the one that didn't like me because our politics weren't the same.
Yes.
That person was like weird and desperate. But if it's like the 3 people I met that you're friends with now, I met them right away, but I already knew I didn't want to date them. You know what I mean?
Well, that's different. Yeah.
As friends.
You didn't need the emotional connection with them in the same way. So if it's somebody you're interested in dating, you want to have that, particularly if they're from far away. It could be expensive to meet right away. See, I mean, I've only had this happen the one time and I was like, oh, yikes. So maybe not a week, maybe 2, but not much more than that. Like, I just don't. I want
like a month or something before.
But that's what I did. But then I had this like emotional connection and no physical connection, and I couldn't reconcile it. And
I think there's something else going on there.
I don't know.
I don't know. It ended up not being the right. I think that it was you freaked out because it was so weird for you. So out of your comfort zone. And also, I think deep down in yourself, you knew that dating someone across the country who happened to be, on a different coast from us is just not a good idea. I think there's a lot of factors that went into that. And also, I kind of feel like people should figure that out first. Now, I did move and marry somebody in North Carolina when I had been in Wyoming, but that had presented its own problems because I was like, get me out of here. I do not want to be in the South. I don't want to be on the East Coast. Like, I'm a West Coaster intermountain person, And so here's the thing about, I think, dating apps is, number one, know that you're actually ready to date before you go getting on an app and getting other people interested in you, or, getting them all a buzz, right? Because it works people up, right? So know that you even want to be in a relationship or be with someone before you go there. And then 2, kind of figure out what you want or what you're willing to do. Are you going to really move for somebody? Well, at that point, I didn't care. I moved for somebody. But are you? I mean, you wouldn't have moved for this person.
No, but I was wondering maybe she would move for me, right? but I mean, I
I
knew that
don't know.
probably
You had that
wasn't going to happen.
experience when you were like in your early 20s. That's the other thing. I think that when you go to date and you're using these apps, you have to say, okay, what age am I? If I'm in my 20s or 30s or yeah, I might move, but come on, over 50 or approaching 50 or over 40, the likelihood of that is slim to none. So
Right.
it really is important because, I thought dating someone in Phoenix wouldn't be that bad. And it had its challenges. And a lot of the challenges came from her circle of friends and family because she was down here a lot. And it doesn't seem like, oh, that long of a drive, but it really is with traffic and with, working and all that. You have to be at the either they need to be down with you or you need to be with them. And then like now you're out of your life. And I think that stuff's really important. And I know that something was important for you, even though you were meeting all these people from all over the place, like all over the country. And really what you wanted was somebody more local. And fortunately
Yeah.
for you, without the apps, you met that person. But I think that's important too. Like, are you really wanting to meet people from other states?
No,
And
but you remember
especially,
how that happened? Because I set my radius to just Tucson and I got the lady that was laying on the table. I got the lady with the like 80s sparkles around her face. And then I got one other person and we went on a date and she was lovely, but it was more like friends. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm done. I got 6 more months on this app. What am I supposed to do? So I got frustrated one night and I just set the radius to like as many people
see,
as you could possibly give me because I felt bad about myself and I wanted more possible matches. And then what ended up happening was I got a ton of possible matches, but they were like impossible relationships. And I got myself not only into the pickle with this one who came out to visit me, but I got myself in a pickle with all sorts of other people that I was communicating with all over the country that there was absolutely no way I was going to move. They were probably not going to move, but it gave me like an ego surge at the very beginning, like, ooh, look. But yeah, do I really want to be with somebody in Illinois? Like, no, I don't want to have to get on a plane and go
no,
back and forth. And
right.
so then I got frustrated with myself and I turned it back to just Tucson and then I got nobody again. And it was like a game I was playing. Whenever I felt bad about myself, I would like expand my radius so that I would feel good. But then I would feel even worse because I ended up matching with people who weren't even feasible for me to be with. So it was a game that I couldn't win, right? Especially for people
Right.
like when you think about if you live in a smaller area, where you might have less opportunity or possible matches, you're like, well, I'll just expand it another 100 miles. I'll just expand it another
Right.
100. And then next thing you know, you've got a radius of what I call radius infinity. And then you're
Right.
stuck.
Well, that is really interesting because I did move, right? And I had my parameters set and so did she to only 500 miles and somehow it like expanded itself out. And, that's a very interesting question that one needs to think about before. Are you willing to move? Are you willing to have someone move in with you that's going to give up their life, And then all that entails, like giving
Mm-hmm.
up the person's life, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm. And are you willing to
it's
travel until you can make it happen? What if someone has kids and their oldest is a sophomore in high school and they don't want to leave until they're graduated. And now you're in this like long distance thing for like 2 years or 4 years until you can both be together. I mean, some people do it. A lot of people do it. I wasn't interested in it, but you're right. You have to clarify that because if I had to do it all over again, I would never do radius infinity. It was like a surge, a hit of dopamine. And then boom, it left me with a pile of rocks afterwards going, uh-oh, what am I supposed to do now?
Well, so I have a friend that's doing that now who happens to be in Wyoming and is communicating with people in LA and Portland. And I'm like, okay, maybe you'll make good friend, but is that realistic? You know what I
Right,
mean? Those
right.
are really, really diverse places. Now, for me, Seattle, well, maybe I'd go back there. I'm from there, I have a lot of friends there. But Colorado, I could consider living in Colorado. But that's the other thing. Are you going to give up your life at some point? Like the the age and how you are in your job and all that, and really are you going to go giving up your life and move to be with somebody that, I mean, I think you really do need to consider that. And I was going to say, one time I just remembered I got on that, was it called Fit Singles or something? I did like one
Mm-hmm.
day, well, no, I didn't even last a day, I lasted 2 minutes. You know why? Because I got on, and you and our other friend were the first two people I saw, and I said, oh great, and I just got off it because I'm like, this community is so small that I'm literally seeing my closest friends. So screw it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm just throwing myself to the fates at this point. Like, if you want to put somebody in front of me, great. If not, I've got other things I need to focus on because I can't take it. It's
Yeah.
hard, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Okay. Well, let's round it out with one last topic before we wrap up today. Let's talk about this idea of ghosting. It happens a lot on the dating apps, right? Like, you might be matched with someone and you're corresponding, and then something happens and you become disinterested. Maybe you just don't find yourself compatible, or they've done something or said something incredibly creepy and you want to get off. So you just stop talking to them or you unmatch with them. It's become kind of the culture. And then it happens to us. And then you're like, oh, what did I do? And the next thing you know, you're unmatched. Have you ever had a ghosting experience that kind of stands out to you, whether you've been ghosted or maybe even you ghosted someone?
Never on any of the other apps. Just, I guess, if you would consider this Facebook thing I did like 2 weeks ago, where a couple people messaged me and then they just like took themselves off. And the thing is, I'm not going to take that personally because number one, everybody's on there looking to date, right? So they may have met somebody that night. They may have met somebody, and they're messaging with multiple people. So I don't know that you can say that. I mean, you shouldn't take the ghosting personally because you have no idea. You also don't know what is really their life. Back in the day, or like when people used to meet people, they were in a town, and so I know this person's family. I know this person. You could know something about somebody. The apps are a whole world of people that, I mean, we have no idea. We know nothing about them. We don't know their family connections. That's why I love Indian matchmaking, because it's not that they're forced into marriage. It's that somebody else is helping to pre-screen people. I mean, the apps can only do so much, right? And we don't even know what's on there. And you don't know why somebody's ghosting you. And they could be like engaging, and then suddenly it turns out that they like are feeling overwhelmed because they're like, I'm a faker, or they don't want to be on the apps anymore. They saw something disturbing. I mean, here's a disturbing thing. When I did get on that first app here after my divorce, we were still just separated. The first person who loved my profile was my wife. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, what?
Well, that's weird. That's like the opposite of ghosting. That's haunting. That's what I would call haunting.
I mean, I was just like, how upsetting, right? Because like, here we are, we're getting divorced and we're on these apps, and I just want to puke my guts out. And now, like, I don't think I ghosted anybody, but you know what I mean? Like, maybe some people have messaged me and I've never responded because I'm just not going to. I know that just from the pictures alone or what they've written on their profile, this is never going anywhere, and I'm not going to bother.
See, I've never done that. I've never not responded. Like, well, initially, like everybody who's reached out, I've thanked them for reaching out. I appreciate you inquiring. I'm not interested at this point, but again, thank you. And I've done that.
I don't say anything because they already know if you don't respond, you're not interested, which I think is kinder than like saying to them, I'm not interested in you.
Well, but, I feel like I just want to thank them for taking the time to like have looked at my profile and reached out to me. And, I've had a lot of people write back and say, oh, well, that was really nice of you to say. And then I've had other people who then think that I'm engaging with them and like, oh, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I was like, no. And then I did end up ghosting a few people because they didn't have any social cues, but there were a number of people who were like, oh, that was really nice of you to do, because I know that you have to have thick skin, and I know that ghosting is a synonymous with like, hey, we're not a good fit. It's not you, it's me, blah, blah, blah. But I think when you get like a lot of ghosting in like either in one setting where like 6 people unmatched with you in a day, it's like pretty overwhelming. Or you spilled your heart out and you had this message that was pretty vulnerable back because you've been having this deep conversation, and then they ghost you or they unmatch you. It's like, wow.
That person could be like a cheater. They could be at home and they just got caught. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then I really don't want to be with them. I get it, but it feels, but it doesn't negate the fact that it still feels bad. Even if you can rationalize it away, it still feels bad. Like when I was had that great conversation with that woman about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we had this just great conversation, and I was disappointed that she didn't want to continue it. Yes, do I know rationally in my head there may have been a million reasons why she couldn't reach back out to me that were legitimate? I get it. It still didn't make me feel less hurt or less disappointed.
Well, we had that discussion. Remember when there was a lot of that happening and you took it personally and you
did.
felt that it was a reflection on you. And I was saying, we don't have any idea what is going on the other end of that computer, and that we don't know. And so I think that's another thing that a person, if you're going to get on these apps, you have to know that it has nothing to do with you. You don't know what is happening with those people. You do not know what kind of lives they're leading. I mean, I can tell you as a former police officer, a person's home can look normal on the outside and it can be a nightmare inside. And that goes for the mind as well as the house. And so you can't take this stuff personally. You really can't, because it has nothing to do with you.
I hear you and I totally rationalize that. But when it's happening,
but I told you at one point just to get off these apps.
Well, and I finally did get off these apps.
Making you feel worse.
They were. It was making me feel bad because of the expectations that I held for the apps, right? If I had different expectations, it would have just been fun and playful and maybe I would have met somebody. But I had high expectations that I was going to meet the love of my life on these apps. And I had every single thing crafted and strategically aligned in order to do that. And it wasn't unfolding the way that I wanted it to. And it became just more difficult. Now, if I were to do the apps again, which I hope I don't because I'm really happy with my partner right now. But if I were to do the apps again, I'd go into it with a really different mindset, right? I'd still would make my really thorough profile and I would still put all the same kinds of pictures up, but I would probably have much lower expectations in terms of, people reaching out in a timely way or the number of people reaching out. And I would certainly set my profile to be only the radius at which I was willing to actually have a sustained long-term life in that setting. So, for me, that would be within like a 30-mile radius. And
I was going to say, would you do, so here's particular to our situation being in Tucson. It's a relatively small town. And especially as far as the lesbian population goes. And then you have Phoenix, which is the bigger, much bigger, sixth largest city in the United States, 2 hours up the road. And you say 30-mile radius, but you're either in Tucson, we're either with somebody in Tucson, because there's really not really surrounding areas there's no surrounding urban area. So you wouldn't get what you wanted. So would you do 2 hours away Phoenix ever?
Not unless that person was willing to move to Tucson.
See, that's good to know because I would be okay with Phoenix, but I also don't ever want to live in Phoenix either. So it'd be like, if that person never wanted to leave Phoenix, and I don't mind leaving Tucson, but it's going to be for somewhere else, California or Phoenix, Seattle or something. And so that would have to be a conversation. Like, are you wedded to Phoenix? If so, like, let's not even waste our time because somebody's just going to get hurt. And, I've learned this. I've matured in this way. Like, if somebody from North Carolina contacted me again, I'd be like, sorry. But see, here's where I wouldn't even answer anymore because I just wouldn't respond. But, back in the day, I thought, oh, fun. And my ex-wife did say, would you come to North Carolina? And I said, hell no. And then a couple months later, I was living there. So, but now having had that experience, I would advise everybody, no, pick your states, pick the place you're willing to live in. And if you're thinking of relocating, although as we know, with the current real estate market for everybody in this country, relocating is almost impossible. So you'd either have to be willing to move in with a person that you'd recently met on a dating app. You know what I mean? So I think these are really important things to think about, but just going back to the ghosting, my advice to everyone is not to take it personally. Yeah. And I'm a person who takes a lot of stuff personally, but that is just, you have no idea what is going on in that person's life.
Yep. Makes total sense. All right, Tracy, we are out of time, but what a lively, good conversation about online dating. I mean, I think both of us, we sum it up here is that online dating is, there's a lot of good things that can come from online dating. People have met some wonderful people and made great friendships and relationships through the online apps. And, there's certainly various ways to approach online dating, certainly understanding what's important to you, what you're willing to do, where you're willing to live. What are those filters for you? Those things that are key indicators as to like, I don't want to continue with this person, like any kind of red flags that come up or any kind of behaviors or messaging patterns that come up, but really understanding how to make it, work for you. And even if your friends have a very different way of approaching it, like in this sense, with, you and I, Tracy, we have really different processes for this, but there are some things that we do have in common, like being very clear about what it is that we want. We might go about it differently, but we're very clear. And so, so I guess what the key really is here is find out what's important to you and be able to reflect that in how you portray yourself online and how you behave and interact when other people are reaching out to you online, and just being very clear about what those things are that are important. So,
and just be authentic, for God's sake. Just be authentic, because a lot of people aren't. Just be authentic, because people don't need to get to know a fake person. Just be yourself.
Exactly. Well, you're ultimately going to have to meet somebody, and if you're not who you say you are, well, that's going to not go over real well. So so know what's important to you, be yourself, get out there. And if yourself is creating spreadsheets and waiting a certain amount of time to respond to messages, then that's okay. Whoever you are, be yourself. But anyways, well, this has been great. Thank you again for chatting through this online dating, walking me back through a very challenging memory lane, but also very enlightening too. So until we chat again, go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.